we want to be accessible. We don't want to be really stuffy. We don't want to be repetitive. And we don't want to be really just formal and heavy with the repetition of government messaging.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the first episode of Conversations with Vanguard Defense. I'm Henry Lewis, the new publisher of Vanguard. And if you've been following us for the last little bit, you've probably started to notice some changes. We have a brand new website, so we have a new newsletter format, and we've started to put together some great original stories and interviews. And a big part of that has been Steve Laterante, who has recently joined Vanguard as our new editor-in-chief. And so we thought for this first edition of our relaunched podcast, it would be a good idea to have a brief chat with Steve, introduce him to the Vanguard community, and just hear a little bit about what he has planned both for the podcast and for the publication generally. So Steve, welcome.
Thanks. It's been a really, really fast learning curve coming on. I've covered a lot of different complicated topics, but defense is full of acronyms and jargon. So figuring out what people are talking about at times has been challenging, but everybody's been really great and really helpful so far.
Yeah. I think how long has it been? 5 weeks?
5 weeks. Yeah. 5-6 weeks. Feels like longer.
Weird things where it seems like yesterday, and at the same time, it feels like it's been years.
In other places I've worked, we've launched websites and it's taken 6 to 8 months, sometimes a year. we've done that and launched a new website inside of a couple of weeks and overhauled the content and brought in new contributors and done other things. So things are moving really fast.
Super quick. Yeah. And lots more planned. But maybe before we get into that, do you want to maybe just tell everybody a little bit about, I guess, where you came from and some of your background, just so people have a sense of
Sure.
how accomplished you are as a journalist?
I started at small town newspapers back when newspapers were still a thing at the Ottawa Business Journal, where I learned to be a business journalist. And then I worked at Peterborough and Kingston before going to the Globe and Mail, where I worked in the Report on Business, where I mostly covered real estate and media, but other things too, everything from murder trials to big corporate scandals. And I went from there to Twitter, where I was the head of government partnerships and news partnerships. So that was a fun time. It was pre-Elon, so it wasn't totally crazy yet. It was crazy in a different way. It was crazy in a venture capital driven company kind of way. It was fun. And there I went to manage digital news at CBC. So broadcast going on to digital and trying to get all the TV stuff onto the website, which is what you see now. And that's sort of the result of our efforts back then. And then I went to Scotland, where I ran what was the equivalent of the CTV news network here is the STV news network there. So I did that before coming back during the pandemic. Everything, I think everybody during the pandemic had to reevaluate their lives. And we decided we wanted to come back to Canada. So I worked at a company called Zonda, which is a real estate B2B platform, publishing magazines about the new home build and construction industry. So sort of a weird, broad cross-section of, B2B, B2C, business.
Yeah. And you're based in Ottawa. So this is almost like coming home for you, as obviously Ottawa is the center of the defense world. And again, your background is awesome. And I think what was important when we brought you on was more the fact that you're great at telling stories, capturing what's going on in the industry. Obviously, defense is new to you, but we surround ourselves with strong advisors and a good community and get plugged in. And I think you've already started to do that. So maybe just tell us a little bit about your initial thoughts on the defense industry and how it's been.
I've been really impressed with the access I've been afforded already, particularly on the corporate side. So there's so many companies now that, you hear the term dual use all the time, but that are either already a defense company, trying to be a defense company, working to get funding to transfer their technology into a defense purpose. So that's been really great. It's been, more challenging on the, the official military side. That'll take a little longer, I think, just to make those contacts. But, conferences help and we have some coming up. So get to meet people in person, which I think is really, really important. I've already been out with people in Ottawa since everybody's here to have lunches and everybody's really keen to get out for coffee and, share their stories. So every introduction leads to another. The other day I went for lunch and I mentioned to the person I was having lunch with, I was just talking to somebody from company X and they're like, oh, you mean this person? And then after lunch, I talked to someone else on the phone and I said I had lunch with this person. They're like, oh, you mean this person? So it's really, really interconnected. So we want to make sure that we're part of that community and that we're helping people make those connections as well.
Yeah, I think you will see that it is a small community. I mean, Vanguard itself has been covering the Canadian defense industry for more than 25 years, and it's very well respected. But at the same time, we want to do more with it. We think there's more that can be done, more stories to tell. We want to really connect the community together. So maybe just tell us a little bit about your plans for where you see us taking things editorially. Sure. and as a platform.
I think we really see ourselves moving beyond the press release and providing more depth in context. And, the magazine's the magazine, and we like the magazine, and it comes out 6 times a year, and there's longer stories that have more detail. But there's room for that on the web as well, and we should be doing that more often. So you'll see an announcement come out on Tuesday. We may do a little bit about it, but you'll see a bigger, fuller story about that with interviews and, more context down the road. Podcasts with influencers, collaborating with other people in the industry who are writing really smart things and, have platforms of their own, but we could help amplify, I think is a good way for us to think about this as well. Upping our social media game, getting on LinkedIn in a good way, making our journalism really accessible. So, we want to be accessible. We don't want to be really stuffy. We don't want to be repetitive, and we don't want to be really just formal and heavy with the repetition of government messaging. We want to dig a little deeper.
We want it to be a two-way street as well. Like we want to basically be that connection between people where, they can talk to us, we can talk to them, we can bring people together. We obviously have our 4 events that play a big part of that. But I think as a publication, we really want to build relationships with this audience and be that trusted voice. If that makes sense.
I've been amazed where on our newsletter every week it says if you get in touch, if you have a story to tell or there's something you want to say, and people have actually been sending emails, which is unprecedented. They're like, hey, welcome, or I've got this idea. So there is this back and forth already happening, and people seem to want to engage, which is great. And we've been emailing back and forth with lots of different people because of that. That level of engagement is promising, and we want to build on that.
We want to keep this episode brief, and it's really just to introduce you. I think going forward, we're going to have really great guests. Where do you see the podcast going? Like what do you really want to accomplish with it now? Will help our.
There's nothing like hearing
community
directly from the influencers in the industry, right? You could read about them and you could read their quotes, but seeing them on the screen, being able to, read their body language, I think is really, really important. And I think it's an opportunity too. I've been having conversations with a lot of different companies, and a lot of them they're not ready for a full 600-word story on Vanguard, let's say. They have a developing technology, or, they're trying to get in the space. The podcast is a great place for them to come and tell their story, to sort of pitch their product a little bit, talk about why they're getting into defense. It really opens up the conversation for us. So we're not stuck in that sort of, Q&A trap or a 600-word story box. We could take it out and we can just talk about it. Like, let's just talk about, wireless harnesses and why they're important for 20 minutes, and things you wouldn't think of that are really interesting, that are actually people are passionate about and are important, and you just don't think about them. So trying to get guests like that on, we'll try to get some bigger names on as well once in a while, and get direct access to the people in power who are making decisions, and also take feedback from the people that are listening and watching, what they want to hear and what they want to see, and then give it to them.
Yeah, I agree. We want this to be a two-way street. Like we're here, we're real people. We want to have these conversations. If you're on our email list, reply back, talk to us. We'd love to start a relationship and help as much as we can in the Vanguard community. So anything else you want to tell our audience before?
No, that's great. Subscribe to our newsletter. That's where you'll find all the best stuff. You can do that right on the website. The new website's vanguarddefense.ca. So you can find the newsletter, sign up there, and all the stories that have been written, and follow us on LinkedIn, where you can get a pretty steady stream of stories.
Yeah, amazing. Again, thank you for listening to our podcast. We're hoping to do this definitely more regularly. Lots of new things coming, and we value your feedback. So feel free to reach out anytime. Thank you again.
I will see you all later.
Bye.